Hello there, people of the internet. How's everybody doing today? I'm doing alright, thanks for asking. Today is a video specifically for the people that comment on all my stuff all of the time. I very seriously get this comment very regularly. They say that something on the lower end, cheaper tier, you know, the lower tier spectrum of whatever it is that typically costs less, they say that item is typically just as good as whatever more expensive item it is that we're talking about. This right here is a good example, although there's plenty of other examples out there. This right here is just a starting reference. We'll get into some other examples throughout the video, but this right here is my little Taurus G2C, I think that's what this one is. Yeah, this is the G2C. Currently, this is the only Taurus that I own. I prefer the G2C over the G3C, just because the trigger's better. I like the sights better, even though on the 3C I could like interchange them with some Glock sights, but why interchange sights whenever you can get sights that you already like? That's kind of my philosophy behind this one. I like the profile on these a little bit better. I'm just more used to the G2C profile as opposed to the G3C. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent here. I chose to get a G2C over a 3C just because I was more used to everything that the 2C had to offer. So anyway, there's a lot of Taurus fanboys out there. I'm not one of them, not by any means, not by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I like them. You can put rounds on target, you know, you pull the trigger, it goes bang, it does what a handgun is supposed to do, but I mean, you could do the same thing with a freaking high point. People in the Taurus fanboy club, they go ahead and they say that the Taurus is just as good as, say, you know, a Glock or some higher end company. We're going to go ahead and use Glock as a good database or a good reference point, because everybody in the gun community knows what a Glock is. They know they're very reliable, very robust. There's plenty of instances out there where people have hundreds of thousands of rounds through Glocks with very little parts, breakages, or replacements or anything like that. And the people in the Taurus community, I mean, people claim all sorts of things over the internet, but claims over the internet and real life instances are not always accurate, or not always the same, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. People will assume that their lower end firearm, just because it lobs the same kind of ammunition downrange, is just as good as whatever higher end firearm that is out there. For example, this Taurus right here costs normally around $250, as opposed to a Glock, which will cost between $500 and $600. They do the same job. They're both, you know, polymer frame handguns. They're both very similar in a lot of aspects, which is a lot of reasons why the Taurus crowd will say that the Taurus is just as good as the Glock, because it will do the same exact job. Well, these kinds of people typically don't put hundreds of thousands of rounds through their pistols. They typically don't work in environments that requires them to draw a handgun very often. They typically, I mean, they will stake their life to their Taurus. Like, for example, this right here is one that I just kind of keep in my car. It's my go-to if I ever end up needing it. There are better options out there, although you will be paying more money. I've had malfunctions with this Taurus, which is one of the biggest issues that getting a lower end handgun has. There are more issues with quality control. If you have a lower cost handgun, then that means that labor hours and time spent fine-tuning that particular handgun are going to be way lower than, say, your higher end, more reliable, more robust handguns. Since the labor time on these handguns is going to be significantly reduced in comparison to those other ones, of course they're going to be less reliable. Some Tauruses out there are just the bee's knees. They run like absolute champions, but you kind of get luck of the draw whenever you go out and buy yourself one of these cheaper handguns. Sometimes they're going to work phenomenally, and other times you're going to have some lemons that give you some issues. For example, the Taurus I have right here, this particular one, has given me some issues. I've had quite a few malfunctions with it. A lot of people tell me, you know, it's the steel case ammunition I'm running, but this Taurus right here also has malfunctions with brass case ammunition. I've ran Fiocchi, Cellarin Bellet. I've ran surplus 9mm. I've ran, of course, the cheap steel stuff through this. Pretty much all of them at one point or another has given me malfunctions through this Taurus. This one right here is just a lemon. I mean, it still works. It's fun for the range. But then again, I did buy this new, so maybe it just is still breaking itself in. A lot of your handguns that you buy new do have a particular break-in period. And I've only got about, oh, I don't know, 300, maybe 400 rounds through this thing. So definite possibility that it's still breaking itself in. And normally with your Taurus fanboys, they won't go out and run their Taurus, you know, nearly as much or as frequently as some of your Glock fanboys will run their Glock. If you have a Glock, then odds are you're able to run, you know, tens of thousands, if not literally hundreds of thousands of rounds through that Glock before you have to replace anything or anything gets too terribly worn out. Something's gonna happen at that Glock down the road, but something's going to happen to your Taurus in terms of breakage or wearing out or anything like that way sooner, just because the material that the Taurus is made out of is far less significant in terms of durability in comparison to something like a Glock. That's another reason why the Glock costs more money than the Taurus. You could get like 2 of these and some change for ammunition and whatnot for the same price that you'd pick up 1 Glock at. There is a reason for that. Quality control and the materials that the firearm itself is made out of. Now, there are people in the comments that will claim that they have tons and tons of ammunition through these Tauruses, and they'll say like, you know, 40, 50, 60,000 rounds. And yet I actually know somebody who owns a Glock, and he is in the process of putting 1 million rounds of ammunition through that Glock. I can't afford that. He can. He's retired. He's making quite a bit of money. He is set up. As a matter of fact, I would actually really much like to have him on this channel one of these days. But anyway, he's in the process of putting 1 million rounds through a Glock. Of course, he has had parts breakages. He's had to replace stuff. But he's still putting 1 million rounds through a Glock just because he can. So that is pretty impressive. He is not at the million mark yet. I think he's at like 500,000 and some change. And even if he were to stop there, that would be outlandishly impressive. It's going to take, you know, several years for him to reach 1 million, especially with the ammo shortages and whatnot that we've had going on right now. As a matter of fact, I'm convinced that he is the one that is causing the ammo shortages. But anyway, even at 500,000 rounds and some change, maybe 600,000 at this point, I don't know, I haven't talked to him in quite some time. But last time I talked to him, at least 500,000 confirmed rounds through that Glock, and it was still going strong. I don't see a Taurus standing up to that kind of test of time. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I've never heard of anybody sticking 1 million rounds through a Taurus, but that would be very impressive. I have heard of these things running 40, 50, 60. I haven't heard anything above 60. I'd be amazed if it even hit 100,000 rounds, but it's not uncommon to see a Glock that has, you know, 200,000 rounds through it, let alone 500,000 rounds. I'm also going to point out that Glock customer service seems to be quite a deal better than the Taurus customer service. Of course, Glock is making a lot more money. They can afford to have more representatives for their company dealing with the various customers that have bought their product. Taurus, I've tried on several occasions to talk to them. I mean, they are friendly whenever I do get a hold of them, but that's just whenever I do get a hold of them. There's been several occasions where I've tried getting a hold of Taurus, you know, just over the years, and I've gotten no response back from them. So customer service is definitely something to consider if you're getting yourself something that is lower end, with the exception of High Point. From what I've been told, High Point has exceptional customer service. I have never needed to contact High Point customer service, but you know what, just as an experiment, I might do that. Maybe I'll make a video talking about the various customer service responses that I get. That might make an interesting video down the road. I'm rambling. I'm getting off topic again. This is what happens in my videos. But it's not just, you know, your Taurus versus Glock people. There's plenty of people out there, anytime I make a video on the SKS, they're like, yeah, the SKS is just as good as the AK-47. And I'm like, whoa, hey, hold on now. No, it's not. And they think just because it lobs 7.62 by 39 lead down range, and you can get aftermarket mags for it that are standard capacity, just like the AK-47, they think that, you know, they're identical or they are just as good. Well, the AK-47 typically is a lot lighter. You can mount optics to it if it has, you know, one of those side rails on it. Century doesn't exactly always include those. Aftermarket parts for the AK-47 are far more numerous and far cheaper than what you can find for the SKS. SKS aftermarket parts are definitely out there, but AK is going to be cheaper and easier. Typically, AK-47s are going to be a lot less weight and a lot less length than the SKS. And anyone who's tried, you know, reloading those 30-round SKS magazines, like trying to reload those is a lot more difficult and challenging than trying to reload an AK-47 magazine. Not only that, but try carrying 5 mags for the SKS in comparison to 5 mags for the AK. There's a lot of people out there who I mean, they think just because it shoots the same caliber downrange and does the same thing that, you know, they think gun A at a lower value is just as good as gun B at a much greater value just because it does the same thing. But that's just not the case. That's like saying, oh, what else is a really good example here? This right here is an example that is not really gun related, but it's YouTube related. It's something I'm thinking about. They would say that, you know, this GoPro here is just as good as, say, my retro camera that looks like I'm filming, you know, from the 60s, just because they both record video and audio, when clearly this one right here is the wave of superiority. I'm coming up with all different sorts of manners to say things just because I don't want to go repeating myself. So, bottom line, just because it does the same thing does not make it just as good. Quality control, types of materials, customer service, availability, aftermarket parts, ability to, you know, mount optics or whatever the hell it is that you're wanting to do. These are all attributes as to whether or not item A would be just as good as item B. The argument should not be whether or not an item is just as good as this other item, even though we all know without any doubt that, you know, an item of cheaper material, an item of poorer quality, an item of less quality control, an item that is a lower tier than a higher tier item. We all know that lower tier item is not going to be just as good, even though it does the job of the higher tier. The question instead, or the statement instead, should be whether or not this lower tier item is good enough for you. Not just as good as the higher tier item, but good enough for you. Like, for example, this Taurus right here, this is good enough for me. It's not as good as a Glock. Actually, as of right now, I don't think I have any Glocks. I think my last one I sold, I had a Glock 17, I sold it a while ago, just because I had some financial issues. This Taurus right here, I mean, if I need it, it's in my car. But for the most part, I just kind of use it at the range, as most people do with their guns. And it's not like I'm out here blasting several hundreds of thousands of rounds. I don't have the retiree $1 million funds that some other people have out there. You know who I'm talking to. I know you watch my videos. You know who I'm talking to. But I don't have the funds to launch, you know, several hundreds of thousands of rounds. As a matter of fact, whenever I do inevitably send some rounds down range, I have a half-loaded magazine. I have 6 rounds of 9mm in this thing, just because 9mm is getting more expensive with the ammunition bans and restrictions that are going on right now. All ammo is just absolutely skyrocketing in price. So since only a few rounds are being launched through this pistol, there's no reason why I need to have a pistol that can, you know, take 250,000 rounds between parts breakages. If I ever shoot this thing enough to wear it out, then my God, I know that I have come far enough in life. If I have the funds and the means to fire off this Taurus, you know, even to make it to 50,000 rounds, that would be very impressive by my standards. All right, well, I am going to go ahead and send some rounds downrange. I remember this right here had some issues last time I had shot it, so we're gonna see if these 6 rounds give me any issues. I'm just gonna aim for my steel silhouette down there. This is not the most accurate of handguns. There are better options out there for accuracy, but this right here sends 9mm lead downrange. And according to the Taurus fanboys, that is good enough. I think the biggest issues I have with these Tauruses, I don't like the sights and how thick they are, but most of your modern polymer frame defensive handguns have real thick, heavy front sights, as opposed to like the thin sights, the military style sights of say a 1911, which is what I'm used to. I could just see my target a little bit better. But those sights are harder to acquire, whereas these right here are, you know, you're made to shoot from here to say like 5 to 7 yards away. You got to acquire those sights nice and quickly. These aren't exactly target sights, as opposed to right now, we're probably, oh, I don't know, 40 yards away from our target. So, yeah, I'm just gonna lob some lead. Let's see if I can manage to hit that thing. I think I hit it. I saw some dirt. All right, yeah, now that I'm shooting this thing, I remember this thing does fire a little bit low, so let me readjust for that. Okay, all right, I heard the tinks on those last 2 shots. I have crap on the bottom of the target, and as I was shooting, I saw the crap keep moving. This fires lower than I remember. I'm gonna say that. This does fire lower than I remember. My Glock fired like a laser, man. Like, whatever I was aiming at, as long as I had it on target, you know, I would hit it. But this thing right here seems to fire at this distance, probably about a foot low. I was aiming at the top of the steel silhouette there, and I was hitting the crap that was on the bottom. So I was just kind of walking that side up. For a defensive handgun, there's just fine. You know, you'll be able to defend yourself against whatever it is that's coming your way. But for the just as good crowd, sorry guys, it's not just as good. I will say though, this time it did not malfunction. Last time I ran this thing, I had quite a number of malfunctions. I think that one of my magazines, because I have a bunch of just these Taurus G2C magazines from, you know, the many Taurus G2Cs that I've owned over the years. I think that one of them is a little on the finicky side, which comes down to the quality control issues that these things have. But I'm not sure which one. So whenever I do have issues, I think I'm just going to keep that magazine set aside, because sometimes this gun runs like a champ and sometimes it runs like absolute garbage. So I'm going to attribute that to the magazine, but I cannot guarantee that. Like I said, I only have a few hundred rounds through this gun, so it's not an impressively large amount, and it's not enough for me to really come to any de facto conclusions. I don't have the money to put a lot of ammo through this gun, especially right now. Not only that, but I don't really have a whole lot of desire to run a whole lot of 9mm through a Taurus. I mean, they're fun. You aim your sights up, pull the trigger, it goes bang. This one right here shoots probably about, at this distance, a foot low. So, I mean, it does its job as a defensive handgun, but it's definitely not a target gun. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what your opinions are down below. Anytime I make any kind of video that is even remotely apart from other people's opinions, they get very, very upset. If you think that Taurus, you wholeheartedly believe that Taurus is just as good as Glock, despite the fact that the quality of the guns are far lower in standards, the quality control is far lower, the types of material far lower in robustness is what I'll say here. It's just a lower end gun, and it costs a lot less as a result. If you wholeheartedly believe that it is just as good as a Glock because they both lob 9mm lead down range, then, I mean, more power to you. You can go ahead and tell yourself that as much as you want. You're not going to get any complaints from me. I mean, like I said, I like Taurus. Although it's not just as good as a Glock, it is good enough for me and the purposes that I'm using it as. Alright, well, I'm starting to feel quite a deal drained. I gotta remember I do have those health issues that I'm dealing with. Not quite up to where I used to be. And, I mean, obviously I've lost a tremendous amount of weight. I still get a little mildly dizzy, a little disoriented, and I'm pretty winded, pretty tired. I think I'm gonna go sit down for a while and just relax for the rest of the day. Thanks for watching, folks. If you like this kind of stuff, like I said, let me know what your opinions are down below. Hopefully, if you are a part of the good enough crowd, this opens some eyes, and you're not going to start, or you're not going to continue to say, you know, this is just as good as that because they do the same thing. You're going to say, this is good enough for me because it does this as well, but I don't need it to be as robust, or I don't need the quality control, or I don't need the material to be as strong as that right there, because I'm not going to be running the amount of rounds that that right there would run. I'm sure that somebody somewhere is going to complain about something that I've done on this video. People always find something to complain about, and that's just one of the things that I signed up for whenever I became a YouTube channel creator. Ooh, is that an eagle or a hawk? That's an eagle. Hey! Nice. I have no idea if that's going to pick up on camera, but we have a legitimate eagle flying around. Look at it go. Yep, into the trees. Well, alright, that's the most American thing I've ever seen. Eagle flying around in the background of a gun range. That is the best. Anyway, where was I? Subscribe to the channel if you like the stuff. Like the video if you like the video. That helps out with the algorithm. In the description, you're going to find a bunch of links to all sorts of stuff. That being said, hey, thanks for watching. I don't really know how else to end this video, so I'm just going to say, hey, thanks for watching. What should I do? I want to find the mags that work in this thing, because like I said, this works sometimes really well, and it sometimes works like absolute garbage. Maybe I'll come out here with just like a bunch of mags with like 5, 6, 7 rounds loaded in each mag, and I'll run them, and I'll see which ones make this gun work well and which ones don't, and I'll scratch off, you know, an X or something in the mags that don't really work all that well. I have a bunch of AR-15 mags that don't really work all that well that I have X's scratched off into, so I don't know, maybe I'll do that down the road. Maybe this, maybe that. I'm gonna go sit down. You guys go off, have a fantastic day. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. Shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.